Mr. Hines? Okay, but we still have a quorum, so we can proceed. Second item of business is citizens' comment period. Are there any comments from any citizens that would like to speak at this time? All right, hearing none, we'll close the citizen comment period and move to the approval of the agenda. The agenda is in front of you and is posted online in due fashion. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Woods. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, I call the matter to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is item 4, the approval of the minutes. The draft meeting minutes are in the packet, and I hope you all had a chance to review those. I did not go through them into great detail, but if somebody would like to make a motion, I'd certainly entertain that.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
All right, motion by Mr. Woods to approve the minutes. Any discussion on that item? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Next item is the monthly financial report, number 5. And so 5A, I would like to point out, I'm sorry for the interruption here, but Mr. Hopkins had a family emergency and will not be able to join us today. That's correct, Mr. Hall? That's correct. Thank you. So, Mr. Hall, would you please begin the ACSA financial report?
Okay, yes, our financial report, this is for the April 4th board meeting, is reflective of cash posting of our February 2023 report. And if you will kindly switch to page 2 of our financial report, which I think in your packet is page 27, and I apologize for those conflicting numbers. But if you'll look at the far column to your right, it shows our water revenue is looking positive at 6.42% when compared to last year, and our water revenues are 16.37% compared to last year. Now, keep in mind, this is just a cash posting, which reflects what we collected the month prior. And if you also want to make a point that we did have, for water connections, we had an increase. We had 2 water connections in the month of February, and we had 1 additional sewer connection in the month of February also, which is positive for us. There is one other thing that Mr. Perro had mentioned in a previous board meeting, that is water consumption from our facilities, which is listed on page 28. I would like to bring to your attention, since that was a question in a prior meeting. That is actually consumptions for facilities for the month in cubic feet. This is what actually happened in the month of February when recorded from all the meter readings that we had. So this will actually show up as a cash posting report. This is April, May, and June. This will be June's cash posting report based off of those consumption numbers. And they are in cubic feet for the month.
So, Mr. Hall, thank you for that. That's item F, consumption and production.
Uh-huh.
So can we walk through it so that we fully understand what this
Okay.
is?
So these cash posting reports are actually 2 months after we take the meter readings. So if we're looking at a cash posting report of February, that means that this is basically the December meter readings that is billed. I'm sorry, excuse me, let me go back. It would be the December meter readings that is billed in January, by January 1st, for the bills to be due by the 10th, with a grace period up to the 20th, to be cut off by the 26th. The money collected during that month shows up as a cash posting that's reflected on this sheet. So when we turn to item F, these are the consumptions that are actually captured in the month of February. So this cash posting report will not actually show up for 2 cycles. So it'll actually be June 1st is what the numbers will be reflected in the June 1st cash posting. That sounds pretty confusing. I know in my tenure here, I don't think we've ever discussed that at any board meetings about this financial report.
So this is for the month, and these are I'm going back, are the February numbers. So basically 2.8 million water was consumed. 2.8 million cubic feet of water was consumed
Yes.
in February 2023, compared to 3 million in February 2022.
That is correct.
Okay? What is city water consumption?
That would be the water that we collect through the Central Virginia Training Center campus, that connection from the city. That is also the VC Mobile Home Park, and there are 3 accounts down next to the River Edge Park, in addition to CBTC. That's water we purchase and then bill for.
Okay. And so that purchase amount has gone up year over year, and that's reflective of the VC trailer park, or
There's
who
a lot
knows?
of, yeah, there's a lot of variables in these, and I do want to, I'll touch on that a little bit. One is, we don't read the meters on the same day every 2 months. There could be a 10-day plus or minus, depending on weather, depending on holiday schedules. It could be that sometimes we do an estimated meter reading, if you will, or bill consumption on a bill. So these things could change a little bit, 2 or 3 days, one way or another, and that shows up and it's reflective in this. So when you start looking at, we produce about 1.1 million gallons a day in our distribution system, and that's what we report to the health department. If you look at that consumption that goes in our distribution system, and then you look at what we capture on a meter reading, sometimes it fluctuates. It's not the same. If we had a way to read these meters on the same day, every month, then it would be more consistent. So there's a lot of variables they could say, and even the city water consumption you're talking about, it could be that they're flowing hydrants, because believe it or not, on that particular system, there's a master meter down at River Edge Park that reads the entire consumption, and there's math done to take out what VC Mobile Home Park is using and some other meters on that. So if they flowed hydrants for the month, it will show up as more consumption for that month. If they're actually filling chillers or doing any kind of maintenance like that, it shows up.
So does the line WA consumption from our fax include what's purchased from the city?
No, it does not. That's basically what's downloaded from our interrogators, from the manual or direct reader reads and all the other meter reads. And we do have, I will say this, we have 24 residential books. 1 through 12 is done in one cycle, and 13 through 24 is done on the next cycle, which is, separated by, every other month. And then we have 2 commercial books that are read every month.
Okay. And instead of wastewater produced, we should probably say wastewater treated. And that's just gone down for whatever reasons. But that is the entire amount of wastewater that we have pumped over to the wastewater treatment. Excuse me, is that the pump station, or does that count the small treatment facilities as well?
What that is, basically, it's really getting into, I'm glad I made some notes, some in-depth conversation. Actually, when we talk about 2 different cycles, the majority of our meters are residential. And if you look on the page, it would be page 28. It shows that we have 6,400 water accounts and 1,114 sewer accounts if you combine both the occupied business water accounts and the residential. But look at that ratio. Our residential accounts are 6,039. Our occupied business water accounts is 425. So the majority of our customers are residential, as we established that. If you divide that into 2 different cycles, here's what's really strange. And it just happens to be the way we can do this to get all of our meter reads done on a timely basis. But cycle 1 has, for example, 460 less water accounts than cycle 2, but yet it has 555 more sewer accounts. So you can't really compare month to month, and that's why I'm saying there's so many different variables when you start looking at a consumption from facilities from a month-to-month report.
Understood. So what is that number? It's a count of, is that
The wastewater
100 feet,
produced-
100 cubic feet at the wastewater pump station on the James River?
We take the water consumptions for folks that have a sewer account and we double it, and that's how we determine our sewer consumption. The only meters we have in our system that measure sewer consumptions is at the Central Virginia Training Center. Everything else is based on water consumption and fire flows.
Okay, okay, all right. Sorry for diving into that. I just wanted to make sure I understood where the numbers were coming from. Do you guys have any questions? All right, please proceed, Mr. Hall.
Okay. I have nothing else to share on the financial report unless you have any further questions. So far, we're looking healthy for the year.
All right. I do not hear any further questions. We'll move on to the Section 6, Old Business, and the Executive Director's report, please.
Everything that's written from the executive director as is, there are a couple of updates I'd like to add. Number 2, the water and sewer rehabilitation, extension, replacement, and other projects listed on page 34 in your packet. Excuse me. For the Lakeview Drive sanitary sewer extension, we have scheduled an April 12th pre-bid meeting for that project. Hopefully, we'll have a bid opening on April the 27th. So that's a new update that's not in your packet. If you'll switch to page 2, it says 2 of 4. We wanted to let you know the Graham Creek Reservoir Dam Improvement Project is going well, and we did achieve substantial completion on March the 30th with a punch list that's been generated. Hopefully by April the 30th, that project will be complete. There is one other thing that I'm just going to let you know. We had a bid opening for the Price to Store water tank on last Thursday. I'd like to discuss that further in the next board meeting, but it was a question asked. I believe, Mr. Wade, you did ask about that. We are still evaluating the bids. The bids still came in pricier than we expected, but we did do a bid opening that last Thursday. And there's some nice photos of the Grand Creek Reservoir at the end of the executive director's report to show you the magnitude of that project. Are there any other questions you may have about the executive director report?
Members of the board? No, sir. Please move on to the Assistant Director's report.
Okay. Not a lot of changes with that. I will say some of the items that we had, we put on hold until the new executive director comes on board, and one of those would be the postcard billing. We have received some quotes from outside vendors that other utility companies use for those services. We've compared what it takes for us to fold and put bills in envelopes. So we've done a few trial runs, but we'd rather put that on hold until the executive director comes on board to help make a decision on that. We are moving along slowly on our lead copper rule survey for lead and copper service line inventory. We're doing it in-house. We're looking at meters. We've completed one book in Old Madison. And the only other thing of significance, the permit reissuance for our discharge elimination system for our lagoon at the water plant. The application with a $600 fee was sent to DEQ on March the 10th, so that application is complete. Hopefully we'll hear something back from them soon. I have nothing else on the assistant director's report unless you have any questions.
Questions? Question on the DEQ discharge system. So this is at the water treatment plant. Have you gotten the draft permit back from them yet, or is this start the draft permit process?
Just a start. We just submitted the initial application, and I haven't heard anything back other than they've received it.
Okay. I would recommend that when you do receive it, number one, review it with your engineers, and also, I think we qualify as members of VAMWA for a review of that. They may be limited to wastewater treatment plant discharge permits,
Okay.
but they may, I'm not sure. But the DEQ's been slipping in requirements that are not consistent across Virginia, and this group makes sure that the requirements are consistent from plant to plant, watershed to watershed, where they need to be, and no surprises lurk. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, next item is Section 7, new business. Item A is a potential water line extension for Route 29 South Amherst Highway from Dillard Road to Lakeview Drive. I believe this was requested by the board, and I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Hall.
So at the last board meetings, you all had some good discussions concerning water flow issues on Route 29 between Dillard Road and Lakeview Drive. And as recommended in the last board meeting, we have our consultant, Hurt and Profit, here to speak on our behalf. I'd like to introduce to you Mike Wilson, PE from Hurt and Profit. There are a couple of things in your packet that we sent for you to kind of review ahead of time. Hope you all had a chance to look at that, and that is some existing conditions and some static pressure charts. So, Mike, if you want to come on up. And thank you, Mike, for being here today for us.
However that works, sure.
All right. Yep, thank you. Thank you very much for allowing us to come here, talk to you a little bit about the water system. Let's start here first by the picture of everybody's aware of Route 29 there as you're headed north through Madison Heights. That's showing you where right there by Dollar Tree, Dollar General, the Biscuitville. The Service Authority just made that connection through there here in the last couple of years for the. All right, I'll talk a little bit louder. So the picture you see, that's the location of the existing water line that's headed up north through Madison Heights. It's in the outer edge of the northbound lane, right, pretty much through the center. I think there's a valve box right about in there. But just so everybody has a representation of where that is as we're headed north through. And as you can see, VDOT sidewalk and stuff, there's not a whole lot of extra room here right away for making improvements, things like that. Right away is right here with the sidewalk on this side, and it's asphalt and impervious all the way through. So I'll close that one back off, but just so we all know kind of where we're starting at from that standpoint. Whoops, I closed the wrong one, Jeremy. I hit the wrong X evidently. Okay, sorry about it. Thank you. So if we start with the water line maps, this is showing the area of Madison Heights that's under consideration. We got Route 130 coming across there, Route 29 down to Lakeview down here towards the bottom, and this is the development that's currently in process where they've cleared the trees by Mr. Patel. So the information that you see on here in the blue, those are the water line construction, trying to give you an idea of age for the water system and size of the water line pipes. So in 1954, the plans for the Henry Lanham water filtration plants were made. The plant's about another 3.5 miles to the west, and it had 12-inch line that comes all the way up from the plant, comes up here to the intersection of 29 and 130, and then goes up to the Price of Store tank. The plans also had 10-inch line, then head south from 130 and 29, and you head south from there. It was 10-inch line till you get to about where current Dillard Road is, coming through at that intersection, and that's where the project started and stopped right there. That's where it started and went all the way up from that standpoint. And the construction plans, note on those construction plans, one sheet says connect to an existing 8-inch headed to Lynchburg, and another plan says connect to existing 6-inch. Till somebody can dig that up. I mean, we don't know. I think the Service Authority believes it's an 8-inch. We know it's an 8-inch down here towards Biscuitville and some stuff in there that went through. I don't know exactly what it is here right through the middle of this particular section, or what the age of that is. Again, if it was, those plans in 1954 said to connect to existing, so I don't, has something else happened from then? I don't know. I wasn't able to find any other records that indicated anything else in 29. I did do just a little bit of other additional, so this is the tank at Price of Store tank. It was also put in 1954 when the plant went in, and its current operation is from 997 is the top of the tank where they really have the water overflow, and the minimum water elevation is at 983. Just to give you some other ideas of elevations and where you're at, the Patel property that's in here right around the road elevation at 29 where the entrances will come out is somewhere in the neighborhood of 812, 810, depending whereabouts you're looking at. And then if you get down to the lake view, it's a little bit higher there. You get a few extra feet, about 5 feet higher. Static pressures from when we did fire flow tests and stuff that were out there, right in this particular area, you get static pressures, about 70 pounds, 65, 70 pounds of pressure. On a day like today, right now, in the middle of the day, if you were, when they did the fire flow test.
Mike, I just realized you had the ground elevation of the Price's Store tank. You've got about a 75-foot tall tank there, and you're only using, or not you, but we're only using the top 14 feet of it?
Well, yes, if you drop back down a lot, you're going to other places in your sewer system, the water system that for getting pressures and things like that you get down, if, the people that are right there getting close to there. That's the way it was for turning the water over, so, that they found that worked out well for them. They've changed the operation. I know they've changed operation over the years as to how much that fluctuates. But so they're about at that top, I think it's about 480,000 gallons in that section that they fluctuate through there.
Thank you.
So this was a map that was in your packet, I believe, there, just kind of give you an idea when we were working on the stuff for, see if I can zoom that, does it fit here just a little bit better. When we were working on some of the project down here through the Patel property and some things like that, we opened up the water model, we were looking at just so we had an idea of static pressures and things that are there. And these were static pressures of the system, assuming the tank's at its low water elevation. Again, that's the worst case that you're going to be looking at from a development side to understand what system pressures are. It should be higher than that under normal operating conditions, but again, that would be the worst case that you would have at that point in time. And the different colors of the nodes and things there, it's references, 20 pounds of pressure is the health department minimum requirements. And you can see from the colors of the dots on here, a lot of the existing static pressures, I mean, you're sitting in the 50, 60, 80 pounds of pressure type stuff is your normal everyday conditions when you're sitting out there. If we went and added demand for this Patel property, again, I know you're talking about Lakeview, so if that's just a little bit further south, again, to the shopping center that's down there, but this information was readily available from some other investigation stuff we're doing with that other project. So when we've added demand, and the only thing we did, we added demand for the development itself that would be happening in through there, those 100+ acres. Again, keeping the system at its low pressure, and still you're able to maintain all of the static pressures. You're still staying, everything's in that 40 to 80 range. Still get some of these out of here where you've got some more elevation differences. So you're really not seeing a large change on your daily demand, which is not uncommon either. I mean, that's not the big, there is demand, increased flows, things like that when you add demand, but that's not your big flows when you're trying to do fires.
Well, can we step back for just a second, Mike? And maybe, I don't want to reiterate something that you guys probably know, but we're talking about a static situation where everything is stationary. So it's basically how much potential pressure you have in any position. But as soon as water starts moving, it's kind of like an electrical circuit, you lose pressure due to friction. Where an electrical circuit, you create heat. If the wiring's too small, you lose pressure in a water circuit. And so when the water starts flowing, and the faster the water flows, the more pressure you lose. So this is kind of a steady state, static look at it, where nothing's moving. They're anticipating demands at various parts of the system, and the model shows you what the pressure would be at those locations.
When those flows are moving. I mean, it's there. I mean, it's assuming those waters are moving through those nodes at that point in time, and then it tells you what the results are at that point in
At
time.
a single point in time, though, too.
Yeah, again, we've got the pressure that's there, and we've told it that it has a node of so many gallons per minute is moving through
Okay.
these various nodes, which demand across the whole system, the way the model was built. took a demand across the city and it broke it through, there's not a connection for every house, right? So we have to estimate and calculate up to get some flows and break that flows across the distribution system.
So, I'm sorry, is this just a model, or did you actually go out and take any field readings, or?
This computer model was put together for the Service Authority. We worked on, this was several years before my time at Hurt and Profit, as to when this model was put together,
So does it take
pre-2007.
into account the age of the system? I mean, pipes that are 1954, what are they?
You can't, when we did this, when we were doing this, there is a roughness factor that's in the computer model that we can adjust globally, and we adjusted it to, again, make sure that some of them were some higher numbers. Again, if we're looking at stuff that's 75 years old, that we were using a higher roughness number that you would normally be doing for design type stuff, yes.
So the static pressure that you found is that's not a recent static pressure?
This static pressure that was here, there was fire flow tests that were done at the end of last year. We did fire flow tests.
Okay.
The Service Authority did one, and it had 68 pounds of pressure there, 67. We went out, and then we did one, both of us, both the Service Authority and Hurt and Profit did fire flow tests here on 29, and then Hurt and Profit also did another one over here at the end of Daniels. And both times, the static pressure, and I've got those reports if you wanted to see them, but both those fire flow tests showed that there was static pressures here of 68, 65, 70. I mean, it was right there in that.
In the range, okay.
They were all right there together. So again, that corresponds with what we're showing with the model.
Something else to consider, but so you see it's a steady state model analysis. There's also a dynamic model analysis that charts the flow over a 24-hour period. So you get high flows in the morning, high flows in the evening. You've got tank filling times, tank emptying times. You've got differential pressures in your tank. So it kind of plots that over time. It gives a bit of a better picture, but this is a good starting point to explain it right now. Thanks.
And if there's something, again, this was a starting point that, Richard asked, so we could come in and give you guys some information, maybe some of this information, if you already know, apologize. I wasn't sure where to start, what to start with. But we can gladly go from here. If there's other questions that you have and you need us to do something different, look at other things, we're glad to do whatever we can to get you answers and understandings further about the system.
You have the fire flow data too?
I do. We're headed there next.
Great.
So again, trying to look at your worst-case scenario, the tank's at its lower elevation at 983. You get a little bit different numbers if you're going to take the tank at the top of the elevator, if the water level is at that 997, when you've got that extra 14 feet in there. But that's probably not the condition that you want to be designing for if you're looking for to be safety for public and things like that. You want to start at your lower end so that you really know if you've got enough pressure there. Is the fire going to happen at the middle of the night when the tank's at its lowest at 2 o'clock in the morning? Or is it going to be just after they finish filling it up in the morning when it's at 10 o'clock and they've just finished? I know where Murphy usually sits in my back pocket. So to give the worst case scenario, we've used the bottom there. We've shown a flow of 750 gallons a minute. Again, we're withdrawing that flow down here at the Patel property. And you can see then when we've run that, instead of our flows before, we had pressures that were the 40, 50s, and 80s, a little higher. Now we're seeing some of these numbers then, we've got the lower ends we got stuff in that 30 to 40 range, these yellow dots that are showing up. So again, and that's as expected. Your fire flow, you're running through a lot more water that's coming through that pipe instead of your slower, just you and I using water at our homes, businesses, things like that. That fire truck's getting there and he's moving, pumping a bunch of water. That friction that Mr. Perro referenced, that does increase your flow rates and your head losses, and that reduces in your pressure. So this would be what we would anticipate, again, if the fire happened out there today. Right now, if it was out while we were talking. So let's add in some other, so now this one takes and adds in the other demand for future development. We've increased our daily demands through here. And you can see with some added demand through here, we now get some of these orange circles showing up, so we're getting, again, some more losses. We're now in that 20 to 30 range. We had some more yellows and things show up here. You did see some extra things happen, which is anticipated, again, because you've got more water that's being demanded through your flow. The next questions, I guess, that suitably follow from them, and how how do you get better pressures, right? I mean, we're above health department standards. You know, the red dots, less than 20, that's what they don't want at your connection, at your right-of-way line. You know, you're supposed to maintain at least 20 pounds of pressure in your system. And on this view here, I mean, you can definitely see there's no red dots that are showing up at that point in time. So to get more pressure, options that you can do, that you can try to get flow coming from a couple different directions, future things. And some other things that were being modeled at that point would maybe be future connection as this development happens, water line will be extended along the roads and things like that that goes through there. And then you would be able to have a connection so that if you had a fire up here in the apartments that are being built, or once they're built and this other road comes in, you could be feeding water from two different ways to get water to those fire hydrants. And then instead of one line carrying 750 gallons a minute, you've got two lines carrying 300 and some change. That just helps reduce that fire flow, that your friction losses in this one pipe. The other way to do that is you increase the size of this water line. Instead of having an 8-inch, instead of having a 10-inch line, you put in a 12-inch line. There's less friction, there's less head loss. So those types of improvements can happen there. Again, this other section that's, even if this is an 8-inch that's coming down through here, making that into a 12-inch would drastically increase the amount of flow that can be put through that piercing pipe. It's not going to change your static conditions. Those are set off the elevation of the tank. We're not changing those. But as far as your pressure drop that you see during a fire, larger pipes will help that, and looping as development occurs and things like that, looping so that you can get water coming in multiple locations helps that situation. Questions on fire flow or anything so far at this point on fire flow? Just so you could see those water line plans that I had here.
So for the Patel property, do you feel like that's an adequate fire flow for that development?
750 gallons a minute?
With that pressure at, what was it, 25, 30 PSI? Static?
I'd always love to see more. I mean, but I mean, that's what can get there. If I go the other route, I don't know, again, that's what we modeled to come through there. But when we did our fire flow test itself, so when we did our fire flow, again, I mentioned, which the model shows, static pressures of 68. This was telling us that when we flowed that high, if we saw the pressure drop down to 10 with a residual at the flowing hydrant, and we had a residual pressure of 29, the calculations tell us that the moisture, that flow was really at 530, not the 750 that we were predicting with the model at that point in time. And then if you,
Do you know the water elevation at that, from that?
if you do the 68 and you convert yourself backwards, it's less than the minimum elevation noted on the tank. So,
That correlates.
so it'd be a little bit less than the minimum elevation where we had the 983. If you take the 68 pounds of pressure times 2.3, gets you somewhere around 150. You add that to the 813 elevation, you're at somewhere around 960 or 70, which is less than the elevation that was at, noted on the tank. Why, I don't know. But again, the static pressure here a couple different times is what's been referenced. So all that being said, here we can go through where I was going with the model. If you wanted to see those other water line maps for any reason, I could show you those. I guess kind of where the next step that would lead to would maybe be some future improvements. And this is just looking forward, maybe some planning discussion for you, thoughts to consider, things like that, as we know where we are today. There's several things out there, whether it's future development along 29, the EDA and extra development, things like that maybe happen with some other industrial business parks. The age of the existing system, that's out there is a, 54 water line. So there's about 4.5 miles of water line from the plant to the tank. That's currently 12-inch water line. The plant went through an upgrade years ago. I mean, it does have potential capacity to even increase its flows. And to doing so, that line should probably be looking at something of a 16 to 18-inch diameter water line at that point in time for future demands as things continue to grow in Amherst County. We've talked here, this was that 2 miles of water line in 29. Again, it's currently a mix of 8 and 10 from what we can see on plans. Maybe there's a section of 6. But again, if we're trying to build a backbone for the water system, that should probably be a 12-inch line. Heading over towards proposed improvements, industrial parks, things like that, any of that that's planned through here, again, this could be a 16, 18-inch line, 12 to 16-inch line. You know, and there's another 1.5 miles or so of water line there to help and give some options. Having 2 options to get water into, if there's a break in one of these lines, it's nice always to have a secondary line of a main size to get some stuff through. That doesn't address anything. You still got 3.5 miles coming from the plant up Route 130. There's not an alternate route through there, but once you get in towards development a little bit, having loops and options helps you out. And then the other thing to help improve pressures, you know, again, the top of the tank is right, that's where the current one is that's normally there. If we're looking for a larger tank and making it elevated, getting that tank up there above the existing so we can increase system pressures, you have more pressure, which allows you to flow water at a higher rate through some of those bigger pipes and then maintain a larger pressure. Because to your point, Mr. Martin, 750 gallons a minute with 30 pounds of pressure, that's fine. We're just flowing at one location at that point in time. We start throwing a second fire truck in at another location, trying to pull off of 2 hydrants, that 30 pounds of pressure or something that's remaining, whatever it is, that just gets worse at that point. So if you have more pressure available, that helps you have multiple locations where you can be pulling and drawing water from. So again, just as for planning purposes, budgeting purposes, the current going rate of water line, I mean, if you're doing the rule of thumb, if you're doing like 8-inch and below is about $1 million a mile. So if you want to try to start looking at something that's 16, 18, you're probably going to be $1.5 million, $2 million a mile. And we've got on here 4, 6, 7.5 miles of water line. A new tank, current pricing budget on those, I mean, that could be $6 to $8 a gallon. So I mean, there could be another 6, 8 million. Just, again, without getting into a whole lot of fine details, I have talked with VDOT, because if you're going to do a water line project, it'd be real nice if you're doing stuff in their right of way, if they're doing a project as well. Piggyback along with them, go along with them. It helps make sure you can do that. There's nothing that they currently have as an active project on their short-term improvement plan that I'm aware of from talking with them as to, you know, they're planning, the thing that they have that says short of some sidewalks, some entrance, they're doing some minor things that there, but as far as a major overhaul of 29, that's not currently on the books from when I talked to them. And I'm not sure where you wanted to go. I just kind of hit a bunch of different things from Roger. Richard asked us to come in, so I wasn't sure exactly. Tried to hit a broad brush there for you.
All right, well, we certainly did want a broad brush, so thank you, Mr. Wilson. Questions, discussion, commentary? Mr. Martin, you have anything? I know this was of keen interest to you, and you've got some personal experience in pulling water out of hydrants here.
Well, I do. I mean, I've cavitated lines pulling off of a hydrant in that very area. That was probably 4 or 5 years ago. As far as fire flows, 750 gallons a minute is nothing to pump. So, I mean, what really concerns me is Patel development, whether or not we have enough water for fire flows. What I think this is very helpful for is future budgeting purposes. You know, I think we should be thinking about replacing those lines. I mean, they're 70 years old. Who knows what kind of condition they're really in. And as you know, if we had a major break, what would we do? You know, there's really no redundancy built in to the system. So, you know, I think as we move forward with budgeting and planning, this is very helpful.
I'm not aware of maintenance issues. I mean, the service authority would be able to tell you more on that, where they do or don't have breaks. I'm not involved on the daily basis from that standpoint. I'm not aware of there being, significant changes like that, of issues to the existing backbone, large diameter pieces. But, even if you start thinking future planning, some things after that, let me get the other map up. Again, I don't want to keep talking about costs completely here, but that is part of the reason that we're here with you. So this is, again, that's the overall water sewer map, water system map for Amherst County. And headed to the Amelon Industrial Park, there's 12-inch line that's headed to that. The right shop tank that's sitting over here is another, one of the lines that you have is, for that tank that's over this way. There's a section of 12-inch line that's currently there. It comes off from the 12-inch line here in 130, goes 8-inch really through there. You got a section of 12, and then you're back to some 8-inch. Again, future planning, thought processes, I mean, I don't know the age of that. That's not as old as some of the rest of it here. But again, as we're thinking long-term, maybe if there's plans, does there need to be thought processes and discussions as to, the model that I had up on the previous one showed, Route 130 coming around here on Dillard and the new backbone piece through the center. Does there need to be another secondary loop that somehow, again, you're not probably going to have this area over here, maybe more residential future development. It may not be your big industrial type stuff that's currently being planned for this area. Again, with large water users that are anticipated, or very large buildings that may need larger fire flow versus, fire flow of the 750. If you're dealing with a house fire, maybe one thing. If you're dealing with very large commercial industrial buildings, that's going to be a completely different discussion. And 2 hours for fighting a fire versus however long it's going to be when you have a 1 million square foot building. Again, they're drastically different situations to be thinking about and considering. So this is just something we can discuss more in the future, whatever it is. I just wanted to, again, raise it up as I was taking that broad brush, giving a high level overview of some things that I see in the system. And that was just another one that I wanted to bring out.
Okay. Any other comments, Mr. Martin? Anything, Mr. Wade?
Just one thing. Are you going to provide all this material to Mr. Hall?
If you want, I can leave the flash drive with you if you want, that's fine.
Please do.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right. Couple observations that I'd like to bring up here. The Price of Store tank as well as the Right Shop Road tank are both ground storage tanks, which means they sit on the ground and it's a big column of water sitting up in the air. If we're only using the top 14 feet of Price of Store tank, what Mr. Wilson suggested is probably exactly right. Get that same volume of water, but elevate it. And I don't know how much more elevation you could take, or that's certainly something that would need to be modeled, because you've already got pretty good pressures, static pressures running through the 29 corridor. But that would give you more volume at elevation. So if you did have a fire flow, you'd be able to sustain that tank level longer.
And
Yes,
that
sir.
tank has already been raised. When that Price of Store tank was originally built, it was, I want to say, 12 feet shorter than it is now. And then prior to my time, I'm guessing 2000-ish. I don't know the exact date, but I know it was raised.
Okay.
So, I mean, to raise it again, you're talking about if there's any other foundation information, whatever would have to go. I mean, it's, again, I think
But
if
it
you
wasn't
need
put
to
on
do
it's not a pedestal. It's not on a pedestal, is it?
It's a ground storage tank.
It's straight ground storage.
The
Okay, so it's
Service
just,
Authority has 4 tanks. 3 of them are ground storage. The Right Shop, Faulknerville, and Price's Store, those are all ground storage tanks. And the Littleton one that you see by the McDonald's, that tank has the elevated tank.
yes. And if you look at this map, you see, we do really want loops. It'd be very nice to know where your demand centers are, kind of a heat map showing your most intensive level demands. And then you could also project that looking forward to the comprehensive plan. And there's no future land use map here, is there? There's, all right, at the future land use map, understanding where your heavier demands are going to be in the future, and use that to help understand where where your future demands are going to be. It's one of the reasons why I was pushing Mr. Hopkins to bring on a consultant that could develop a master plan for, complete with assets and understanding the assets and just long-range planning. Also, I believe we need a reliable secondary water supply. I know we've got proposals in for the raw water intake. Up, you can see it in the far upper left corner. But
So where are we with it, Mr. Perry?
the raw water
No,
intake,
the master plan.
nowhere. It has been stagnant. I'm looking forward to getting it going, or getting a RFP on the street to
As I am, yes, thank you.
go. And I hope that Hurt Bravo would certainly respond to it. But we need a long-term plan for this community, especially seeing the growth. And we're probably about 5 or 10 years behind, probably 5 years behind where we should be as far as having one. So we can plan this out, because you're exactly right, Mr. Wilson. We need to start planning out this work. And I think that's for the new executive director, this is going to be needs to be one of their priority tasks. So thank you, Mr. Wilson. Are there any additional comments from the board? We need to move on, if not.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you for sharing that.
I'll just close these windows down and I'll just leave that in the drive in there. You guys take that out when you're done.
Thank you.
bet.
All right, moving on to item B in section 7. So this is the employee selection process to fill the vacant ACSA executive director position. This is an open session discussion specifically as it relates to how we make the selection. Mrs. Felix is here if we have questions related to it. This requisition is open until filled. There are several applicants that I'd like to share with you at closed session. If you're willing to go into closed session today, there's several applicants. And I'd like for the board to decide whether they'd like to initiate an interview process while leaving the applicant period open, which I would encourage, or to close the process and go with applicants that we have. There's no harm in, and Mrs. Felix informed me that it's perfectly all right to start an interview process while seeing if you get other applicants in. So that leaves the question of who should be on the interview committee. I've heard suggestions that the EDA should be involved, that the county should be involved, that I would think at least 2 of the members of the board of directors could be involved. That certainly could overlap with the board of supervisors if that is preferred. And I'd be curious as to your thoughts. I will, as a starting point for discussion, I'll throw out that I'll suggest that the interview committee be, and of course, I haven't talked to any of these members to see if it would be acceptable, the chair of this board, the vice chair of this board, the town manager, the EDA, and the EDA manager, with Mrs. Felix being a part of it to make sure that we don't break any rules. But should there be others, or should there be a different arrangement? I open up to the board.
I would think we'd want our county administrator involved, for sure, or planning.
Did I say town manager? I'm sorry. Yes, I meant county administrator, Mr. Bryant. My apologies. And maybe my apologies for including you.
So, yeah, I don't think you want to make the interview panel too big. What my thought is once the panel makes a recommendation, how would this full board provide input into it?
Good question. Can we hold off on that and hear about panel? Any thoughts on who should be on the interview panel for either of you?
Only thought would be if you wanted to include, rather than me, include one of the supervisor members. It would might cut down on some redundancy. I mean, or it might add to.
Okay.
I think the list you got there is pretty sufficient with his recommendation, so.
Okay. So chair plus board member.
and hopefully a dual-seated board member.
That would be the.
That's fine.
Sound good?
Put David since he's not here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just kidding.
All right. All right, to Mr. Martin's next question, which is a good one. I would hope that the interview's complete, and then come back with a ranking to this board, and then this board could elect whether they'd like to have a second interview. Or maybe there's initially a phone interview with the committee, then an in-person interview, and then bring it to the board. But I'm suggesting that the initial interview committee come back with a ranking to this board. This board decides at that point if they'd like to speak further to any of them or proceed with the interview committee's recommendation.
Well, I would think that this board is going to be the ones appointing the next executive director. I would hope that this full board would have an opportunity to interview whoever the candidate is, and instead of it, here's your candidate, vote on it, because how are you going to know, right? So I think your process up until maybe a final candidate is fine, and then bring that candidate in to meet the board
Okay.
for a final interview.
How about bringing or giving the board a ranking of candidates, and then the board decides if they want to bring in the top-ranked candidate or
Fine,
the alternate?
yeah, whatever. Yep.
Okay. Certainly, we can do that. Mr. Wade, you
I'm
look like
just
you're thinking,
Yeah, I'm thinking.
and not putting you on the spot.
Now, if you're gonna be ranking, one thing to consider is, laying out that board that's gonna be, looking at the candidates, come up with some categories. That way they're all ranking the same essentially across the board. But yeah, I think everything else is good to go there.
I agree with Mr. Martin.
Okay. Is this board okay with a special meeting if necessary to kind of advance the process and accelerate the process? For the purpose of, one, discussing if we'd like to conduct an interview, or it sounds like we will conduct an interview, a final interview, and when, and then probably at that interview too. Okay. Ms. Felix, have I left anything out, or is there anything that the board should consider in this process? Okay. All right. Mr. Hall, I hope you have good notes for that? We can go over at the end of this and make
Hope the
sure.
audio comes through.
All right,
real
I
well.
think I did. I think I've got it. All right. Any other comments about the selection process? And Mr. Popovich, I assume that, that should cover us. All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, next item on the agenda that's the wrong agenda, is miscellaneous matters. Anything you need to bring up, Mr. Hall?
Just
Otherwise,
a 10-second plug. I
Yes,
just
sir.
want to congratulate our staff. We had another staff member who achieved his class water operator 2.
Great.
It wasn't too long ago, we were having concerns of not having licensed operators in our water plant. I want you to know to date, making notes, we have 7 operators that are 2 or better in the water plant, which is fantastic.
That's excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, next item is item 8, is citizen comment. Are there any comments from the citizens? Okay, hearing none, I would like to go into closed session. I think we can be, well, your meeting is, the Board of Supervisors meeting is in 34 minutes, right? So we'll see if we can't turn this pretty quickly. Mr. Popovich, would you help with the section number?
Yes, sir. It would be
I've got it right here.
2.23711A1.
I can I make a
All right.
motion that the ACSA board enter into a closed session pursuant to section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia 1950, as amended, to discuss and consider prospective candidates to fill the upcoming vacant position of the ACSA Executive Director.
All right, thank you, Mr. Martin, for the motion. Is any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are in closed session. And Mr. Felix, would you join us, please?
I make a motion that the ACSA board come out of closed session.
Motion on the table, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Motion carries.
I make a motion that the ACSA board certify by recorded vote that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion authorizing the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed session.
All right, motion by Mr. Martin. Any discussion on the motion? All right, by recorded vote, aye for yes, no for no. Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Woods?
Aye.
Mr. Wade? Mr. Pugh is absent, and chair votes aye. All right, at this point, gentlemen, we are adjourned.
Very good. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Got to run.
Yep. So, yeah, sorry to hold you too